Mayfield, this is the final play of the game. Dancing up in the pocket. Here's the heave. Down to the end zone. It's in the air. It's in the end zone. And it falls to the turf. There were 3 Buccaneers waiting for it, and it looked like they lost it in the lights. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were there. Nobody jumped for the ball, and the Bills at home to start week 8 escape with a 24-18 win at home over the Buccaneers.
Well, that was the moment last night that the game ended, and man, that's one of those plays you can watch 100 times, and there's a lot to unpack. Although there's one thing right out of the gates, Peter, I gotta say it. K. Dotton got mugged by 2 guys, and I know that they don't call pass interference on Hail Marys. I'd like to have a conversation about why that is, because K. Dotton got mugged by 2 guys, and he would have had a chance to catch that ball. Taylor Rapp and Christian Benford took him out at the goal line. We'll show it again, I'm sure. Took him out. Mugged him. Both guys neutralized him. There's no way he's getting near that ball. There they are, right at the goal line. K-Dot ends up on his butt. There it is. Look there, right at the goal line. If he's not mugged, he's got a chance at catching that. I don't know what the solution is, but I know what the problem is. They never call pass interference on Hail Marys, Peter, and good morning.
Good morning, Mike. You know, I thought about that last night, but I mostly thought about how that was probably the most beautiful Hail Mary pass I've ever seen. Think of Baker Mayfield. He's not known as a noodle arm guy, but he's hardly known as Dan Fouts and, or Dan Marino with some great rocket arm. That was a beautifully placed and thrown ball. And to me, what it says to me is very, very simple. That the Bucs don't teach that play very well. Because when you get to the end zone, the only thing you should be concerned with is looking for the ball. And that ball landed a foot from where Chris Godwin was basically just standing there, ready to catch the ball, seemingly. And I just thought that is a play that probably is not worked on enough in practice, at any point. And look at this. This ball was thrown 63 yards in the air, a perfect spiral, and a great throw. And so, I don't know. If I'm the Bucs, I've got tremendous regret this morning because that game was basically handed to us. Now, you talk about the interference call, Mike, and I'll just say this. The NFL, if it's not going to call interference on this play, and it clearly never does, if it's not going to call interference on the play, then you ought to make it like the tush push. You ought to just say, hey, look, nobody designed football. The rules makers in the competition committee didn't design football to have 2 huge men line up behind somebody and push him through the line of scrimmage. That's not what football is. And I don't care what anybody says about, the tush push, that's the base of football. It's not football in 2023. It shouldn't be football, but it is, so good for the Eagles for capitalizing on it. But my only point is, if you're going to have a play like the Hail Mary play, then you ought to basically say that we're not going to call interference on this and anything goes. Because they don't call interference on it and anything goes.
You make an excellent point, and that's what bothered me about this. And look, we've got 2 prongs, and I think we can address both of them. You're right. Chris Godwin had a shot at the ball. Chris Godwin didn't seem to realize that at some point during the play, a football was going to emerge into his field of vision. kind of an important aspect to the Hail Mary play. At some point, the ball is going to be here. It was almost like he was surprised by the sight of it. I don't know how effectively you can practice it full speed because there's too much physical risk involved with bodies everywhere, and I don't know that you'd want to do Hail Marys full speed all the time because they don't factor into your game action all that often. But wins and losses hang in the balance in those moments. And Baker Mayfield, who, by the way, was spectacular last night. He's not going to get the credit he deserves for the way he played last night. He was constantly under duress, constantly harassed, constantly trying to buy an extra half second. There was one play where he was in the middle of being sacked and he completed a pass sidearmed. If they had 11 Baker Mayfields on the field last night on offense, they would have won that game. He was determined to will that team to victory. And I'm not saying that as a slight to the other 10 guys, but he played with relentlessness, with drive, with determination, with fearlessness, with recklessness, not in a bad way. He had no regard for his own well-being, no regard for his body, and every regard to do whatever he could to keep the Bucs from losing 3 in a row. And I got more respect for Baker Mayfield today than I had yesterday. Not that I didn't have any, but I had plenty. I have more after watching him last night. And it's a damn shame they lost the game. And it all came down to, like you said, a beautiful Hail Mary. It was perfect. And because Chris Godwin seemed to forget that at some point a football was going to be arriving, and because Cade Otton was Malachi Crunch, there's a reference that'll take some of your way back and cause others to say, what's this old guy talking about? It was a Malachi Crunch on Cade Otton. That's what kept it from being a touchdown or an untimed down. Just like the last primetime game we saw in Buffalo, untimed down. End of the game. Chance for the Giants to win. Untimed down. Chance for the Bucs to win because they'd gone for 2 when they were down 14. The analytics approach allowing them to avoid overtime and get a walk-off win if they score again. And they almost did. It's their fault for Godwin not being ready to catch the ball, and it's the NFL's fault for creating this bizarre culture of we don't throw flags for Hail Marys, except when it's replacement officials who fail to throw it and everybody goes nuts and it ends the strike back in 2012. Remember that Monday night game when it was Golden Tate with the blatant offensive pass interference to catch a Hail Mary? The sky was falling after that, and the real officials were back 3 days later. Otherwise, they don't call it, and nobody ever says anything about it. Everybody just kind of accepts it. Al said it at the end of the game. You could call penalties on a bunch of guys here if you really wanted to. Yes, you could, but no, they don't want to.
Here's the, I have 16 points based on what you just said. Look, and I realize that there's so many games that are decided by sort of fluky things. They just are. And last night, to me, you say that, the Bucs either should have, could have, whatever, won this game. The Bucs got back in this game. I'll tell you how the Bucs got back in this game. All right? With a ridiculously long drive that twice on 4th down was aided by penalties on the Buffalo Bills, including once, okay, when Jordan Phillips almost as he got called for a face mask on a 4th and 8 that the Bucs failed to convert. And it was almost a never mind face mask. I don't know if we can even see that again, and I know that that's a weird play in this game. But the only reason that the Bucs had a prayer at the end on the Hail Mary is because Jordan Phillips got called for, and it was a face mask, don't get me wrong. But it was almost like he clearly did not mean to do it, and I'm not excusing it. It's got to be called. It has to be called. But I'm just saying it wasn't a violent face mask. It was clearly what I would call an accidental face mask call. But anyway, be all that as it may, Mike, you talk about you can't practice that play full speed. You don't need to have 68 guys in the end zone, okay, when you practice that play. Here's what you need. You need the player to know that when he gets to the goal line, he's got to look up in the sky and look for the ball. That's what you got to do. It was weird for as good and as fundamentally excellent a receiver. Tom Brady loved Chris Godwin, loved him. And for somebody who's as fundamentally sound and as good a receiver, it's amazing to me that Chris Godwin passed the goal line and basically never saw the ball until it hit the ground, seemingly anyway. That's just an odd play, and I think you can practice that. When players get to the goal line, you teach them, look up, look up. Don't care about guys who are pushing you and all that stuff. That doesn't do you any good. Look up for the ball, find it, and fight for it. That's what that play was about last night. And, the Bucs didn't do it.
And you make a great point. Look, the outcome of any game or the potential outcome change in a game is influenced by so many things that play out in the course of the 60 minutes of football, all the way back to the first drive of the first quarter, if you want to take it that far some nights. The reality, though, is what resonates, what's remembered, what is the last thing that causes people to say, wow, that thing goes the other way, the other team wins the game. And it came down to that Hail Mary. You're right. The face mask, hey, it happened. It extended the drive. Game would have been over. The Bills failed on multiple occasions to deliver the death blow, for lack of a better term, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On the other side of the 50, 4th and short, punt. And it did a good job of putting the Bucs in very bad field position. And one of those drives resulted in the 22 plays. Go ahead.
Can we just look at this play? I want you to watch this play because here's what I want to tell you, okay? Because on this play, he's almost down already. And the last act is a face mask. But, Mike, do you realize on this play, it was 4th and 8, okay? The play was basically over. And he was going to lose 10 yards. It was going to be 5th and 18. They were going to be 18 yards behind the first down, okay? Shy of a first down. And they get 15 yards and an automatic first down. And again, I think when I watched this last night, you know what I said? I looked down and I said, okay, they would have been 18 yards shy of a first down. And this weird, not egregious face mask, okay? I almost think you ought to have roughing the kicker and running into the kicker on face masks. Remember when they used to have that?
Used to have it.
Okay.
Used to have
it.
To
be.
Never explained why they got rid of it.
There used to be judgment on that call.
Yeah.
Okay. So my only point, I'm fine with you making all face masks a 15-yard penalty. But in my opinion, make it a 15-yard penalty. That's what you should make it. Why is it an automatic first down? So my point is that, that play last night was a crucial play, and that happened with 4 minutes left in the game or something like that. And they were down 24-10 at the time. This game was over. It was long since over, especially because the Bucs took 9 hours on that drive. What are they doing? Come on, Al Michaels must have said it 16 times, and he's absolutely right. Why are they going so slow on this drive? Anyway, be all that as it may, it was a fun end of the game, and I just think this about all of these things. Football is a very, very narrow window between victory and loss.
And the point that I wanted to make is it shouldn't have been that narrow because the Bills kept punting on the other side of the 50. At some point, you got to trust your offense to gain 4 or 5 yards. The ball goes into the end zone, you're looking at a 20-yard net. That's what the Vikings did the other night, and I thought it was a horrible mistake, and they're lucky they won the game. 4th and 4 from the 42. They punt. It goes into the end zone. It's a 22-yard net, and in 2 plays, the 49ers are where they would have been if the Vikings had gone for it and failed. You've got to be willing. And in this age of analytics and go for it and be aggressive, go for it, go for it. The Bills punted like 3 times in that spot.
Hang on a minute. I want to ask you this question. Here it is. Bills are up by 6 points. All right. They have not been great on converting this year necessarily, although I don't even know what their fourth down numbers are. But it's just, me watching these games. Do I trust them to get a yard on 4th down? Because here's the consequence, Mike. If they don't get the yard on 4th down, okay, they give the ball to Tampa at the 48-yard line, all right, or maybe midfield if they lose a couple of yards. And this punter had left the ball on 3 kicks around midfield. He had left the ball at the 2, at the 3, and at the 8. Okay? I would much rather have my guy punt the ball with half a minute to go and Tampa having no timeouts. I'd much rather punt the ball with my punter having a record of putting it right inside, the 10-yard line. And if you show replay of that, and I talk about obscure plays to show replays of, that play with 29 seconds to go on that punt, it was in the hands of a guy at the 1-yard line who just missed flipping it back. So Sam Martin did his job. His gunner did not. So, but all I'm saying is that I will guarantee you this morning, you know what you would be screaming about? If they went for it, failed, and the Bucs came down on a short field and won the game, you would have been screaming that Sean McDermott made a dumb call. That's what happens.
Can I say this? Let me say something, Peter. Let me say something.
Yeah.
Let me say something. You're missing my point. You're missing my point. You're missing my point. I should have interrupted you early on because twice they were up 14 when they did it. I'll concede the third one. Twice they were up 14 and they didn't go for the death blow. That's my point. And I think maybe a third time they punted. They were at their own 49. I don't know what the 4th down play was. I'm looking at the game log now. But twice they had a makeable 4th down. They're up 14, and they punted. You want to put a team away, you keep the drive alive, and you take 14-21, because it kind of felt that way. And I think one of the reasons why Buccaneers fans this morning aren't as upset about the final outcome as they could have been, because they watched that game, and from the moment it was 10-10, something in the Bills finally woke up. And it's 17-10, it's 24-10, and it felt for so long, it's just a matter of time before it's 31-10. And the Bills had multiple opportunities, up 14, to put him away. And twice, at least, maybe a third time, they punted in position to continue a drive that would have put the Bucs away. The last one, I'll agree with you. They should have punted that one up 6. That's one of the benefits of playing the analytics game of going for 2 down 14. You give the offense a lot to think about when they get the ball back and they're only up 6 points. It's one thing to think, well, if they get the ball back, we'll go to overtime and we're at home and we'll win in overtime or whatever. You're up 6, you're thinking, we can't let them get the ball back. And they did, and they almost won. And I just think that the broader point that I think the NFL needs to have a conversation about in this age of legalized gambling, where they better get their act together before the scandal comes. Whatever it is, whatever shape it takes, whoever it is originated by, whatever function, quarterback, coach, GM, official, whoever. This is the kind of thing where they got a rule on the books. There's no exception for Hail Marys in the rule book. Remember in 2019 when they were going to have replay review for pass interference and they were trying to graft this exception onto replay review for Hail Marys because they're conceding they never call it or rarely call pass interference on Hail Marys. He's got a problem here. And like you were saying about the quarterback push play, if this is the way that it's going to be, somebody needs to capitalize on it. And the Bills, to their credit, bravo. You got away with it, just like you did in the end zone against the Giants. Mug Darren Waller, because that guy standing at the goalpost who just called pass interference in the end zone and heard about it for 40 seconds from all the fans 10 feet away from him, isn't going to call it again. So keep Darren Waller from catching the ball. And hey, if they throw the flag, we get another on-time down. We'll do it again. So take out Cade Otton like Taylor Rapp and Christian Benford did. It worked. They didn't call it. We won the game. So, whether it's in the rule book, not in the rule book, it's application of the rule, whatever the case may be. Good coaching consists of recognizing the things you can get away with. And I guess we should be praising Sean McDermott and the Bills for knowing in that moment they could get away with pass interference because they weren't going to call it. Because if Cade Otton hadn't been touched, maybe he would have been the one with the head on the swivel who would have seen the ball coming in, caught it, and extra point. Bucs somehow win, and a lot of reaction shots of sad Bills fans wondering what the hell just happened.
Yeah, I think that what happens a lot of times, Mike, you talk about this a lot. You talk about, the bright, shiny object being the next game, being the next series of games. You think about this, and I thought about it a lot after that play last night. There's several things. Number one, the Bucs have got to coach the Hail Mary better, period. And why don't they just basically exclude Hail Marys from pass interference? Because technically, Mike, the back judge on that play should get a downgrade for future playoff assignments because he ignored the mugging on Cade Otton. So if that is going to get called on any play, any other play than a Hail Mary, do the officials sit there in New York when they grade the tape on Monday? Do they sit there in New York and they say, oh, Hail Mary, that doesn't count? It's ludicrous. The play could have decided the game. If Chris Godwin catches the ball, the Bucs win the game. So then it does count, doesn't it? And so those are the kind of things that I just think because the NFL has however many, 13 more bright, shiny objects this weekend. Oh, wait a minute, it's a non-bye weekend for some reason. So they have everybody's playing. So
14.
Now there are 30 teams.
14 and then one Monday.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is everybody's playing. So there's 15 more games. So there's going to be plenty of time to forget what happened Thursday. And the NFL does that all the time. They just forget the stuff that should be a story. And that mugging of Cade Otton, I'm not saying that's the story of the game. What I'm saying is that is an issue that ought to be discussed by the competition committee. And there ought to be if you're not going to call it, then exclude it from the rules, period. Just say anything goes on this play. Because honestly, doesn't anything go in the tush push? Anything goes. Push, shove, pull, yank, whatever. And there's a rule on the books with the tush push, by the way, that you can't pull a player along, okay? I want you to look at, I bet, 10 of Jalen Hurts' tush push plays. And you see plenty of grabbing him and trying to pull him forward. And I, so if you're going to have a rule, call the game by the rules.
Oh, you're right. I noticed Dallas Goedert pulling Jalen Hurts on one of the quarterback push plays earlier this year. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. there's never a chance to have a meaningful discussion about any broader concept, like this idea of why don't they call pass interference on Hail Marys? Should they? What would it look like? Would it be maybe just a different standard? Let's just make a different standard. Instead of open season, let's have a different standard for pass interference on Hail Marys, just like they were trying to create a different standard for replay review of pass interference on Hail Marys. Of course, first of all, you have to have a generally accepted understanding of what a Hail Mary is. And ultimately, I remember all of this debate. It's like, you know it when you see it. You know what a Hail Mary is. But should we have a different standard? Should we have no standard? What should it be? Oh, wait, we got 14 games on Sunday. Let's put a pin in that until the next time it comes up. And how many of these things really resonate into the offseason? How many of these issues become such a big deal? And every once in a while, you'll hear the perfunctory report from somebody that the NFL is going to discuss. Insert name of controversial play in the offseason. Okay, fine. What actually happens during the regular season that makes its way to the offseason? The quarterback push play, presumably, because it's one thing that isn't going away. But, Peter, the only reason the pass interference thing with replay review became a big deal was because the instance of uncalled interference happened in the NFC Championship game, and everybody in New Orleans lost their mind and boycotted watching the Super Bowl. They had record low ratings for the Super Bowl that year because every Saints fan was still pissed off that the Saints should have been there. That's what gave it the momentum necessary to get to February and March. This conversation that needs to be had about a rule book that says nothing about open season on Hail Mary plays is interpreted and applied by the NFL and the officials to be open season on Hail Mary plays. What are we going to do about this? And the broader point that I make, as the NFL gets its sea legs in this environment of legalized gambling where the NFL is grabbing every last dollar it can, you have to be thinking about where the landmines are. And when you have a rule on the books that gets applied completely differently in certain circumstances than the language in the rule book would suggest, you got a problem that you need to be worried about because it's going to bite you in the ass one of these days. But like you said, any discussion, and I bet, Peter, we're the only ones talking about this. We've been talking about it for 20 minutes now. I bet we're the only ones that are going to talk about this today. Maybe in Tampa they will. Maybe in Tampa. But it's an important point. And it's going to get obscured by, we got games coming up on Sunday. And it's only going to be an issue if it happens at the end of a big postseason game. Then it carries into the offseason.
There's really not much else to say other than, somebody in the NFL just has to put a note on the calendar. Okay, and the note on the calendar should be on February 24th or whatever day it is that people in the NFL office, including in football operations, are going to fly to Indianapolis, and they are going to have 3 days of meetings with the competition committee to discuss things that happened in 2023 and to discuss what are going to be our big issues this year when we get to the NFL meetings in March, and we are going to decide if we're going to make any rules changes. The time to change the rule is not today because you're in the middle of a season. The time to change the rule is in a conference room at the Indianapolis Convention Center on February 24th. That's the time where somebody with a conscience should say, we need to do something about the Hail Mary play. You shouldn't just say, it's a Hail Mary play, who cares? You should care because out of the 160 plays in the game last night, that was the last one, and it could have been easily the decisive one.
Last point I'll make echoes something I said earlier this week. And since I've already pissed everyone off at 345 Park Avenue, I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I always thought that the reluctance, for example, for full-time officials or reimagining the officiating function with all the technology that's available now, and Bill Belichick's been arguing for fixed cameras, etc., all the things you could do to make it better. I always thought it was just a matter of cheapness. Somebody with one of the teams explained to me a few weeks ago that people also just don't want to be bothered. They don't want to work harder than they're already working. Like Michael Scott once said, I don't get paid by the hour anymore, I get paid by the year. You're not going to get anyone, any of the executives, any of the people who are involved in this, they don't get a bonus. They don't get overtime for being creative, for being responsible, for prioritizing these things and pushing against the momentum or lack thereof, which would be people on the competition committee rolling their eyes. Here we go again. No, we don't want to do that. Because, Peter, here's the bottom line. Everything's fine. If you're the NFL, you can just look at it and say, everything's fine. We don't need to rock the boat. We don't need to make these changes because the money keeps flowing through and nobody's really giving us a hard time about it. Yeah, some of those jerks out there like Florio will nip at our heels from time to time, but we just kick him away. No one's really doing anything about it. They're still watching the games. We're still making the money. Why do we want to take the time to mess with it? We don't need to do it. So, until the moment comes that someone sues them, someone disrupts their reality by creating a regulatory agency, someone starts handing out indictments because they believe that there's something that crosses the line into the world of criminal prosecution, whatever it may be, until that happens, they won't do it. They should. You're right. They should, but they won't. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.